All right, so we're going to do a midday market recap here, brought to you by Warrior Trading. So I'll go over the gappers this morning. You can see on the gap scan, this is from 9:20 this morning, there were a number of stocks gapping up, but most of them, you can see here in the volume column, had very light volume. We had PTN gapping up with some volume. This one, we could just take a quick look at the chart and recognize that the gap was off of yesterday's or Friday's really weak trading session, so a little bit of a bounce off the lows, but that's not a long setup for me. So no trade, no interest in that, no trades on that. We've got BLDP. This one I've traded a good bit in the past, and it can be decent, but it is a little bit of a heavier float, 130 million shares, so it's not my favorite. You can see we had a nice little setup on this for a long over 240. We had that nice little pre-market flag, and that's pretty much what I look for with any gapper, a nice pre-market flag. So I said, okay, guys, well, I do like the pre-market flag, so I like it long over 240. Right out of the gates, we sold off, came down to 225, ended up coming back up, and we did take a trade on this over 240 right here. Got the pop up to 246. I mean, 6 cents, it's not much. It looks like a nice little move here, but this is a $2 stock that doesn't have a very big range. The entire range today was within 20 cents. From 225 to 245, I mean, just not a lot of range. So, 6 cents, I mean, that's capturing 20% of the move today. I mean, it just, there just wasn't a lot of volatility in the name, but ended up total only getting 2 cents of profit. So it was a small winner, but a winner nonetheless. It popped up here to 246 and then came back down. Sold half at 244 and stopped out the rest break even at 241 as it was coming back down here. So this one, again, kind of reflecting the issue with higher float stocks. 130 million shares, just not as fun to trade as lower float stocks. All right, so let's look at a low float stock, CAPR. So CAPR, this had news this morning. And I said, all right, guys, I like it out of the gates. Well, initially I said I like it over $7, right? That was pre-market. That was at 9.10. Now, pre-market session continued and we moved up to 7.50. So I said, okay, well, it's strong. We're lacking the volume, right? At 9.20, we only had 40,000 shares of pre-market volume. So not a lot of volume, but we had a good gap. We had a decent chart. It was running, and we had the low float. The low float, that's the very limited amount of supply. So when these stocks start running, they can move very, very quickly, which is why pre-market, it went from $6 up to $7.50. All right, and it continued running, went up to $7.63 pre-market. So what I did on this one is I said, well, let's just watch it out of the gates to see if this gets volume, because right now, pre-market, it's a little too thin to trade. I don't, it's just a little riskier. I don't fully trust it. So we had the first 1 minute candle. High of 785. Second candle, high was 774. And I said, okay, I'm going to get long over 774. Stop is at the low for the first candle to make a new high. All right, so I said pre-market that I already had a 1,000 share order lined up at 775. Oops, what happened here? So I'll let this chart load. So in any case, jumped in long 775. We popped up to $8. Hesitated for just a moment at the $8 level, and then we broke over $8. And so I added another 1,000 shares at $8, looking for that pop. And you can see here the volume was coming in on this move. It was a little bit of sell-off and then a move. We got up as high as 824 before pulling back. So this ended up being a nice winner. Could have been better. The spreads were not ideal. The volume was not ideal. I was hoping that this would, it popped up here on the high a day volume scanner right here out of the gates. It was, first one on there, and then PTBI, and then it was back on there. So this one had potential to be a really nice runner up to $8.50, maybe even $9, but just couldn't do it. Well, let's compare this to BLDP, which traded in a 20-cent range this morning, right? This one has a range from 736 up to 831, and that's all in just 3 minutes. So stocks that have a lot more range have bigger windows of potential profit. Now, it's only potential profit. It's not profit until we realize it, until we take the trade. But this is the potential that these lower float stocks have. when they get volume, they can make some big moves. So we always look for a low float stock that has a news story. Unfortunately, sometimes even the best news story fails to catch the attention of traders, and the stock will pop up and then fail, and it's just out of play for the rest of the day. And that's basically what's happened here on the CAPR. You know, a nice pop out of the gates, and then it's just kind of fading on very light volume. Now, this is especially noticeable during the summer, but the high volume out of the gates and then the decrease as the day goes on. BLDP, same sort of thing. You're going to see this on almost every stock because this is the typical volume profile for most stocks. Now this one, you can see here, we had the sell-off. It didn't look like it was going to go. It looked like the stock was done. And then all of a sudden it surged up very quickly. That is not, I mean, that's a little bit more difficult to anticipate. That one's not something that's quite as common. Now OCLS, this is one that we saw, there was some news out on this right just in the early few minutes of trading. 9:50, some news came out, big volume spike. So this was trading on no volume until the news came out. Volume spike, get a little bit of a sell-off, so you get that decreasing volume here. And then what we look for on these is the bull flag. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 candles of pullback, consolidation, right? And then the idea here would be to get in at 163 with a stop at 159. My concern with this was that, you know, we had this pretty big move here on this candle that ended up forming a doji. And I was concerned that because of that doji, it was going to be really hard for us to break the top of it. Now the top was 183, and so from 163 to 183 is still 20 cents of profit. And again, compared to BLDP, this moved 20 cents in a much shorter period of time, right? So you could have gotten here with a stop at the low. What you look for is the first candle to make the new high, and then the volume immediately to increase. So this is what I look for on a bull flag. Big volume on the move up, then decreasing volume on the sideways consolidation, and then increasing volume on the flag break. Okay, now in a perfect world, what we would see is that this up ramp actually surpasses the volume of this move. So you have high volume, pullback, higher volume, slight pullback, and then even higher volume. So we look for 1 ramp, 2 ramps, 3 ramps up. And I always trade the first pullback and the second pullback and look for that third one to be where we get parabolic. Unfortunately, what sometimes happens is that the parabolic move will happen earlier in the run. Maybe just, I don't know, for whatever reason, traders jump in, we get parabolic, and then we end up dealing with the first pullback being after a parabolic move. Trying to trade the backside of those moves is much more difficult when you're trying to trade them to the long side. It's easier when you have the smoother waves where you have a nice momentum trade, a little pullback, a little bit of a bigger momentum push, pullback, and then a final one where we get parabolic. That's, you know, what I would say would be very clean momentum, and, you know, we just didn't have it on anything in particular today. But OCLS, not bad here. This pullback, the only thing I didn't like about it was that we were actually below the VWAP here. I thought we pulled back a little too sharply. I just wasn't sure about it. And this morning we've also been dealing with some technical issues. A number of people have had their brokers down, issues with losing connection to the quote servers. So I don't know what's going on today, but it seems like a good day to throw in the towel a little bit earlier. It's 11:30 here. I've got 3 trades. I'm up just under $400, which, you know, is slow, steady. That's the name of the game. I, of course, would like to be closer to the $500 to $1,000 range, but, you know, I'll take what I can get on a Monday morning. Gives me a little bit of a cushion that I can work with tomorrow. You know, now today I'm not up as much as I'd like, but that's all right. So now we'll look at a, let's see, I'm going to show you 1 second here. Let me get this to pop back in. All right. So you can see here, this is just on our homepage of warriortrading.com. So the last couple of weeks we've been doing polls and asking our students how you're performing. All right, and our students, these are on the trades that we trade right out of the gates, the gap and go trades. Basically what we did on CAPR, BLDP, sort of like that. Those types of trades. And we ask our students, how are you doing? All right, and for the most part, most of these days our students are doing pretty darn well. Now, out of the 200 plus students that are in the room, not everyone obviously takes the trade, and that's fine. Some people don't like trading in the first few minutes, or it's too volatile, or whatever. That's okay. But we're happy to see that a lot of students are doing really well. Our focus each day is finding the one or two stocks that have home run potential and putting those in front of you so you can see the stock, you can see the news, and you know how I'm going to trade it. Now, how I trade stocks may be different from how you trade stocks because we all have our unique style, and it's going to be the result of different risk tolerances, and I may be willing to risk more on one day or less on another, and it's going to be different for you. So we all trade a little bit differently, but we're all focused on the same stocks because those are the stocks that are in play each day. Right? So I always focus on the relative volume leaders, the stocks that have a catalyst, they have a reason to run. And we're really good at finding the big movers most days. Now, some days we don't have a lot of big movers, and there's nothing we can do about that. It is what it is. But on the days where we have those good gappers right out of the gates, we know how to find them. And CAPR today, regardless of how I traded it, this had good potential in the first few minutes for a trade. And maybe it was just a scalp because it's not a sustained trend. But in any case, there was potential there. There was a nice window. BLDP, same. This had a nice potential trade here. Now, it wasn't a big winner, depends on how you traded it, but you're looking at the right stocks. You want to make sure each day you've narrowed down your watch list to 4 or 5 stocks, right? The ones that you think have the most potential. Our goal is to teach you to trade. We want you to understand the reasons why I'm buying and selling. So I know a lot of traders, they're looking for a simple service where they can simply follow someone else. Just follow the leader. And to be truthful, you'll probably never be profitable doing that. And even if you were, you would be 100% dependent on someone else for your income. And there's not a very good feeling with that. I tried mirror trading. I tried just following other people, and it doesn't work. The problem is, if you wait for someone else to buy, you're always buying behind them. Whether you see their order go through on the level 2 or on their trade screen, if they're sharing their trade screen, or if they just say, hey, I bought this, or if they type it in the chat room, hey, I bought this, you're always going to be behind them. There's no way to be ahead of them. You're always going to be behind them, right? Now, we, of course, say, listen, guys, I've got an order for BLDP to buy at 245, and I put that order up at 920. So you guys knew where I was looking to get in, and you can do what you want. But if you wait for me to say I'm in, you're always going to be behind. So that means the winners are going to be a little bit smaller, right? But the bigger problem is that when the trade goes the wrong way, the losers are bigger. So you have smaller winners, which is not good, but even worse, you have bigger losers, right? And that makes it almost impossible to match the results of someone else. When I was a new trader, I was, learning a little bit from a friend who was a much better trader than I was. And he was profiting day in and day out. We were training together on Skype, and he would say, okay, I'm looking at this here. And I would try to keep up, and I just couldn't. Like I said, my winners were smaller than his, my losers were bigger than his, and I was not able to be a profitable trader, despite a tremendous amount of hand-holding. I just couldn't do it. And this is the common theme among a lot of students that we've had that come to us looking simply to mirror trade. It's not sustainable. We want to teach you to trade. And so for all the students that are succeeding in those polls, when we've got 80-90% success, those are students either who took our course or have been trading with us for a while that understand momentum trading. They understand the strategies that we're trading every single day. It's not that complicated. You just have to learn the patterns because the patterns happen again and again and again. All right, so our number one focus is to teach you to trade. I only trade the strategies that I teach. So if you ever have a question about why I took a trade, you can find it in any of our classes. And you can, of course, ask me. You don't have to be in the class to ask me questions. And I'll tell you, this was a gap and go strategy. This was a momentum trade. This was a reversal trade. This was the setup. Learning to trade is difficult. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we're going to help you speed up that learning curve by putting you in front of the best looking stocks each day and by teaching you the patterns that you need to be able to recognize. That's the best that we can do. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you learn. Among our students, we have an 80% success rate, and that's something that we feel really good about. Certainly, some days it's higher and some days it's lower, but for the most part, our students are doing really well learning to trade momentum. All right, so again, anyone with questions, you can always reach out. You can call me, 802-585-1740, or you can shoot me an email, ross@warriortrading.com. All right, thanks, guys.